Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a very, very, very special episode of Uncanny Treks. It is the last regular episode we will do on Star Trek Lower Decks. It is a very sad occasion for us, but never fear. Next week, we will be back with a recap episode of the entire run of Lower Decks. We might even talk a little bit more about the original 70s animated series, too. But right now, we are talking about episode 10 of season 5, the series finale of Lower Decks, New Next Generation. Later in the episode, we'll be talking about No Small Parts, the season 1 finale of Lower Decks, which originally aired on the 8th of October, 2020. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
Doing pretty well, Bob. When you heard the title, Next Gen, what came to mind? What was the first thing that popped in your head?
Promotion.
Yeah, that's all I could think about was just like Captain Picard and the bridge of the Enterprise D.
New Next Gen is a pretty good title, but do you think they maybe missed a trick and they should have called it All Bad Things?
There you go. I like that. All bad things. Because I'm very upset, Bob, that the show is not coming back for another season. Although it was hinted at that there may be additional animated shows down the line, they did set up for some things.
Although I think the one we were talking about would be live action, the one that Mariner is the actress. We thought it was animation, but that thing they're talking about that's a comedy set on a vacation resort where they might potentially have next gen Lower Decks DS9 characters showing up. That would be a live action comedy, which would be the new angle for it. That it'd be the first live action comedy in Star Trek.
Right, but is that tacked onto this whole ending, Bob, where we have our Starbase 80 at a portal?
I don't think it is. If they follow up the ending of this episode, and spoilers, why would you listen to us if you haven't watched the finale of Lower Decks?
Yeah.
But if they follow up on this, which I do not expect they will, at least, yeah, I'm sure they will in the novels and the comics, but I do not expect it to be followed up on in the actual TV shows, live action or animated. But that would have to be more epic, right? That would be a little bit more of a serious crew having a serious adventure. Whereas, at least as I understand the sketch of this resort show comedy, it would probably be more lower stakes, like Lower Decks.
They've done some world building here.
I don't think we know about any animated shows coming. I don't think we know about any more Star Trek animation in the immediate future, right? Because it's unclear if Prodigy is going to get a season 3. You and I are hoping no.
It probably won't. It probably will get a season 3, but we won't be watching it.
That's not how Netflix rolls. That when Netflix acquires a new property, they usually just do first.
Oh, that's surprising because I mean, geez. I was literally thinking about it. I love Futurama. I wonder how many seasons they did. They acquired Futurama. They did Arrested Development. They did
2 seasons of Arrested Development, but Arrested Development's a bad comparison point because it was early in Netflix's business model.
Right.
And Futurama is a bad comparison point because a pretty long-running established franchise that they revived, whereas Prodigy was a revival, but the season was already made and they just bought it.
Bob, let's move on to New Next Gen.
Yeah, New Next Gen, Matt. I guess to begin with, our Klingon lady captain's famous last words, tachyons mean nothing to a bird of prey. That really cracked me up. That was a good early joke. And I did want to comment that with our lady Klingon captain on her bird of prey, I really did get a lot of both Star Trek the Motion Picture and Star Trek V the Final Frontier vibes from these scenes, especially like when they attack the Bloodwine freighter, very similar to when the bird of prey blows up that ship early in Star Trek V.
Yeah, there's always something about Klingon ships, Bob, and how they're the dirty version of space travel. And I don't know why. Why is that necessary? The ship has the same technology as the Federation ones, but they look like they're living on a barn.
We've seen versions of that. There was the episode in Next Gen where Riker got into a transfer program and was on a Klingon ship. There's the several episodes of DS9 that focus on Worf Martok and Worf's son Alexander on Klingon ship.
Right.
And then there's the Barge of the Dead, which an old style Klingon ship and not a spaceship, but the Barge of the Dead from Voyager.
Barge of the Dead.
It's a good episode. I think it's the only episode Ron Moore, the guy who did Battlestar Galactica and was one of the big writers on DS9. I think it's the only episode he did for Voyager. It was originally supposed to be a DS9 script, and then they didn't have room for it, and so he just retooled it for Voyager.
Going back to your word tachyon, that's one word I'll never forget because I wanted to purchase a book that my grandmother thought was well above my vocabulary level. She pulled a word out, and the word was tachyon. She goes, "What does this mean?" I said, "It's a particle that travels faster than light." She like bought the book for me. It's really nice.
Nice, nice. Wait, and you only knew that because of Star Trek, not
They,
because your father was a chemistry teacher.
oh yeah, it was just Star Trek. Had absolutely nothing to do with chemistry.
Science in the broad nebulous sense that I don't understand it. Another Mariner line I really liked from this finale was, "Who knew that higher rank came with so much time to goof off?" It's honestly quite relaxing.
It's kind of true, although I just don't know if it has to do with just your time management skills. As you get a higher rank, you just become so good, you just
It's
manage your time.
supervisors work less. I firmly believe it. That's been a reoccurring theme of me talking about the show. Is one of the things I love about the show is its commentary on modern corporate work offices. Yeah, we talked
Yeah,
about like the buffer time earlier in this season.
yeah.
I taught that. I think it's the season 2 finale, Wage Douche, where you see the lower decks on a bunch of different species ships.
Well, maybe they just need that extra time because it's so stressful.
So another good Freeman joke is that she blames, and I haven't said any before this, but we'll say a lot later. But a good Freeman joke is that she and the whole rest of the crew basically blame Boimler for this multiversal mess. And she has the line, "Looks like the Boimlers have given us no choice." That really prized.
Did,
Or go ahead.
did you like the return of the alternate Boimler, Bob?
I'd totally forgotten this, and I still don't really remember it very vividly. But apparently, it was the episode that Boimler died. They did set up that he was on a mysterious Defiant class ship, so that was seeded, and I totally.
Wow. So this show like goes deep with the continuity.
I think that's true, although there's also interesting ways it maybe doesn't that we might get to later. But yeah, certainly some of these gags, some of these motifs are really long seated. I'm not a big guy for rewatching stuff, but it does to some extent make me wish I'd maybe rewatched seasons 2, 3, and 4 more recently than I have, because I basically just watched them when they aired, I think.
Yeah, and when we do our coverage of the entirety of Lower Decks, Bob and I'll talk a little bit about that and how going back and watching season 1 in hindsight has really brought out some more of the nuances and the intricacies of some of the jokes, the long-running jokes.
Maybe I should save that Mythos question for next week, too, now that I think about it. Well, speaking of callbacks, this was a more recent one, but were you surprised that Apollo's granddaughter reappeared?
No, I said she was coming back in our coverage from the episode she did appear in. There was a reason she got like pushed in that last season.
And use her as a plot device, and her lightning last's powers as a plot device. I think I was predicting we would never see her again. Vindication time for Matt.
Yeah, vindication, Bob.
Another good bit of business was Ransom saying readings are getting freaky. If the Freeman's yelling on the intercom, "All hands brace for weird." I really like that. As we've matured, you and I, especially, I mean, you were never that hard on it to begin with, but I was very, very much a ship nerd, and I'm much less a ship nerd now. I don't care that much anymore. But even still, I really wanted to hear Tendy's explanation of how Freedom class starships, which are the one nacelled Galaxy class, although they're much, much smaller than the Galaxy class, but they look like the Galaxy class. But I really wanted to hear Tendy's explanation of how Freedom class ships and other one nacelled ships create warp bubbles. I was really here for that, and Freeman cut her off, and that made me sad.
Well, I mean, maybe one day, Bob, I'm sure some book will give you your answer.
Indeed, indeed. Were you a little sad about how the Tendy and Chalin co-science officering failed?
You did get the classic line between them. Now we unite as science besties.
And that was a good line. Obviously, you have to have conflict and resolution. That's drama. But if you're arguing that much during a crisis, it shows that the sharing of the position doesn't work.
Yeah,
Even if you do make up.
That may be why there's only one person, in those positions, because during times of intense stress.
They didn't really address why this was, but I like to imagine it's because Freeman and the rest of the crew blame Boimler for the multiversal situation because of his Defiant counterpart. So randomly, he's no longer flying the ship. He's no longer on the con, and he's down in cetacean ops taking care of the belugas.
Yeah.
And that made me laugh.
It's a very important job, Bob. Very important job.
Very important job. Hey, man, I want the belugas taken care of. They're some of my favorite. I also really enjoyed we have the ship going through its many multiversal transformations, and one of them is they go Terran Empire, and Shaxx is just unadulterated joy at the weapon systems that being Terran Empire provides. That was very funny.
Yeah, he was really excited about getting to use them, and then they like immediately go offline. Poor Shaxx.
Poor Shaxx, poor Shaxx. One bit I really enjoyed was Freeman asking how come the Klingon ship hasn't changed, and Dr. Tiana replying, Klingons hardly ever update their ships. They always want them to look like stupid birds.
The Romulans are the same way, right?
You got the birds of prey from the original series, the original birds of prey before the Klingon birds of prey.
Right.
And then you have I think they call them warbird.
Warbird.
In DS9. Another ship transformation, we have Shaxx announcing, Captain, we've gone all sovereign class.
During the ship transformations, Bob, were there too many? Were there not enough? Or was it just right for you? Because they went the sovereign class, they went like Oberth class, they kept going, freedom class. Yeah, they went all over the place.
I could be sympathetic to it being too much, but I would lean about just right.
Yeah, the rule of thumb is usually 3, but there could have been some others, a couple of more transformations at that point.
They had pretty good jokes for each transformation.
Yeah, but it was also blink and you'll miss it with some of it.
That sort of chaotic cameos, that's the style of our MCU.
Yeah.
For worse times. But also, it is supposed to suggest a certain crisis or a certain frantic pace. I thought it was a pretty strong series finale, but the end, thought it was kind of lame. Am I right in saying we basically have a weird multiversal portal now, and then they drag Starbase 80 because it's old, and so its technology won't be affected by the multiversal portal, so they drag Starbase 80 there, and isn't that basically what the end of Picard season 2 was, which famously Picard season 3 never came back to or addressed in any single way?
Yeah, it does sound the same. This convenient portal that's just right there, and it's never going to be revisited.
Well, in both the end of this and the end of Picard season 2 just feel like real low budget, low imagination recreations of DS9.
Yeah, I'm thinking phone game.
On the whole, I've enjoyed New Trek. I enjoyed a lot of Star Trek Discovery until I didn't. I enjoy Strange New Worlds quite intensely. I like Lower Decks quite a lot. But man, some of this writing, it's just nonsense.
Yeah, and they're really just setting up Bob so they can tell stories later on. They're throwing writers a bone.
They're never going to go to.
But they don't know that. They may not.
It's still so astonishing that they're not going to do a Star Trek Legacy show after Picard.
Well, Bob, another thing we're done with, Rutherford's implant, Bob.
How did you feel about Rutherford getting rid of it?
It was extremely unnecessary, and I don't understand plot-wise why. Did I miss something? I mean, I know the Cerritos has old technology, and that's a whole thing. His implant's not able to keep up with it.
Maybe they've been teasing it this season, that he's been a little more frustrated. But honestly, it didn't stand out that much to me. And I don't know. If I could be really cringy and really woke for a minute, ideal to have this character be, oh, I have this adaptive technology. Oh, actually, I don't need the adaptive technology. I'm going to be more myself without it. That's weird from a disability perspective. I know they've been teasing Rutherford and Tendi crushing on each other for a long time. In season 4, they had them basically honeymooning on Ferenginar. I said this then, and I'll say this now. Rutherford and Tendi, really, neither of them read to me as straight. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I'm not a... Rutherford and Tendi, if I were ever going to characterize characters as like almost asexual.
They both read as pretty homosexual to me. Especially the way Rutherford interacts with Boimler, Tendi's vibe too. But that's not necessarily what the show is put down. That's just what I've been picking up.
Right.
But it seems a little weird to me that, and also, I think you were saying this a minute ago, Rutherford has been so defined by the implant, just in the sense that all stories about Rutherford revolve around the implant, that what even is Rutherford? And I don't mean this in a problematic way, but just from a storytelling perspective, they haven't told us anything about Rutherford that doesn't relate to the implant. Does that make sense?
I'm not saying Rutherford's a strong character. This is the equivalent of Data becoming magically human at the end, the last episode of Star Trek Next Gen. It's a little Wizard of Ozzy. I don't like it.
Now that you bring up Data, I think it is supposed to be the equivalent of Data getting the emotion chip, maybe.
Yeah, we saw how that went.
Matt, who was your character of the episode?
But I'm gonna give it to Relga. That would be the Klingon that is the antagonist in this episode, and I'm primarily giving it to her because of her micro targ. It's hilarious that they have domesticated little targ.
Little poodle targ. That's a strong choice. I like the micro targ. Very strong choice. I'm as shocked as anybody by this, but I'm going to have to give it to Ransom. I was surprised at how useful and sneaky and clever Ransom was in this episode before he was promoted to captain. I was surprised he was promoted to captain, especially because they play him as a moron a
Yeah,
lot this season. I mean, they always do, but especially earlier this season. And he's got some of the funniest moments in the episode when he tells Shax, Freeman told me to never let you detonate that warp core
yeah.
unless you really deserve it. I also thought his scheme, even though I was criticizing the co-science officer scheme of Talin and Tindy, I thought his scheme of I'm going to promote both Mariner and Boimler to be my provisional first officers, and then I'm just going to make them compete for it. And I thought that was really funny.
And
Engage the core is so lame, but I laughed so hard.
yeah, I died laughing at that too. It's hilarious. Engage the core. It'd be funny. It's one of those things that would be funny the first couple of times he says it. Then it would just be like obnoxious afterwards if you're on the bridge and having to hear it all the time.
And the fact that it's not going to be
Yeah.
funny.
Yes.
Funny in the
Yeah.
you could feel Mariner and Boimler just cringing for the next 3 years.
It's just not going to age well.
So good. Were you surprised by how prominent Ransom turned out to be in this episode as well?
Kind of, yeah. If they're gonna go with this middle decks or upper deck show at some point, that would be a neat place to go with Ransom as captain.
I don't think they've ever talked about it. I think you've just wished for it. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wish.
I make things up. I do, Bob. I just make things up in my head and just say them out loud like this, like they're real, but they're not. I'm trying to manifest, Bob.
Way to manifest, Matt. We're a podcast. If we've been going for about 3 years, it's appropriate we get into New Age spirituality.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make it clear for the listeners that Matt is manifesting. He's not reporting.
Yeah, I'm not reporting.
Podcaster's obligation is to clarify when they're manifesting and when they're reporting.
I do not have an inside scoop.
Man, we skipped over this, and I would be remiss. I just want to say it because I love these characters. It's probably the last time we'll get to really talk about them. But the end with Tayana and Shatz hugging Freeman, just because I love Tayana and Shatz. That made me feel happy.
All right, Bob. Anything else to say about the final episode of Lower Decks?
Despite it being vile multiversal propaganda and setting up vile multiversal spinoffs, I really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, let's go all the way back to season 1 now, to the season finale of season 1. No small parts.
Yeah, no small parts, baby. So I just want to say I totally forgot that early in the episode, Ransom is looking at an animated series from the 70s picture of Kirk and Spock, and that was really funny.
One thing that really kills me about Lower Decks is that they have just revitalized Star Trek the animated series. I know us covering it has also revitalized it in my brain as well and actually introduced me to it and everything, but it's painted the animated series as something that's canonical and actually part of the series, and that all those things actually exist. It's not just the offshoot of Star Trek.
We talked about this before, but when we were growing up, the mainstream Star Trek reference stuff that Paramount licensed, in Star Trek Encyclopedia, the Star Trek chronology, it didn't consider that stuff canon. And I think in the aughts, when we were less into Star Trek, I think they really softened on that. And they started including more animated series references, especially like in the novels and the comics. But you're exactly right that Lower Decks and also that little micro season of short treks for the anniversary of the animated series really, really have made it canonical in such a fun way.
Right. And if you watch or have watched the animated series, there's just so many more Easter eggs in the show. You're just going to enjoy Lower Decks more if you're just aware of what it is they're poking fun at, or what that character is actually from an animated series show that not as many Trek fans have necessarily seen.
Listeners, if you haven't seen the animated series, obviously I think we covered season 1 along with most of season 1 along with season 4 of Lower Decks, and then we had big omnibus episodes wrapping up season 1 of the animated series and then doing season 2, which was a short season. But yeah, listen to us, go back and watch it. The show is terrible. I mean, it's objectively terrible, but it's also surprisingly charming and better than you would think in a lot of ways.
Yeah, my suggestion, if you're going to go and watch it, just Google top 5 TAS animated episodes and just watch those. And if you like those, go back and watch the rest of them.
My suggestion is drugs. Matt can't suggest that, but I can.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to suggest it. Do drugs and then watch it. Do the really hard, but find some mind altering substances and go for it.
Whatever you do, though,
To get
don't,
back
don't,
to,
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead.
Oh.
No. Give
Um,
your disclaimer. Your disclaimer is important.
Whatever you do, Bob, don't worship the dang computer. That's all I was going to say.
Exactly. That was, yeah, don't take so many drugs or don't watch so much 70s animation Star Trek that you start worshiping the dang computer. Which that was, I think, my favorite line of the whole season 1 finale from Freeman when she's berating that planet from Return of the Archons, the TOS episodes. She's berating them for restarting worshiping the dang. Matt, I just have to ask, do you love the phrase "those old scientists" as much as I do?
Those old scientists will ever be embedded as the name of that era to me. Like Lower Decks has done that.
Oh, it's perfect. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
it
And as
fits.
soon as I heard it, I was so excited. The only problem with it, and this isn't a serious problem, but I often think of it as those original scientists
Yeah.
instead of those old scientists. That's the only problem with it, but God, I love it.
Yeah, it's really good. Really smart. Smart writing on their part. Jeez, Lower Decks writers, give these guys a raise. Give these guys and girls a raise.
Give them another animated series.
Yes.
I also totally forgot that the season 1 finale is both when we meet Peanut Hamper, one of my favorite supporting characters of the show, and also the first time we see Tiana and Shax hook up. That was really funny.
All the way back in season 1. What is it you like about Peanut Hamper? What do you like about this character?
It's really funny to have the return of the exocomps from the next gen. That's really funny. I think her jokes are good. I like that she's a coward. It's very funny when Lower Decks actually does bad Starfleet. I think it was season 3, maybe it was season 4, but the season where they did the Avatar episode with Peanut Hamper.
Yeah.
That was really great. And we've said this innumerable times before, and I'm trying to get over it because it's not the show they wanted to make. But to me, that's the thing that really could have upped Lower Decks' game, is if they'd committed to doing more strange episodes like that focused on side characters. Because I love the Fantastic Four. Well, I don't love Boimler, but I love 3 of the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four are really fun characters. But God, we get it. They're very well established. Tropes and ticks and obsessions are very well established. Branching out the show more, although they did start to do that a lot more with the Upper Decks in the last couple seasons, but branching out the show more like they did in the Peanut Hamper, to me, would have been the secret. I don't know if it would have made a difference in terms of viewership, but at least in terms of content would have been how you got the show to the 7 seasons. That would have been perfect.
Yeah, you could have extended it, but I don't know if you would have had as many. I don't know if you would have got the viewership. People like the Fantastic Four. We like to follow them.
It's no accident that and granted, this is a different show because it's animated and it's 23 minutes instead of 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's no accident that most Star Trek shows have an ensemble of about 8 main characters instead of just 4.
Yeah, because you can follow all of them at different points. Have standalone episodes.
This is something we've noticed. I can't remember how much it's carried over into seasons 2, 3, and 4, although I think it does somewhat. But we've noticed, I think, a couple times in season 1 that they really tease the sexual tension between Mariner and Ransom. And obviously, they can't have Mariner and Ransom hook up because the end of season 5 would be a lot creepier if they did, right? With Ransom promoting Mariner.
Right.
I just wanted to ask, setting that aside, are you disappointed that Mariner and Ransom never hook up, or do you like it better with it just being a weird sexual tension that they occasionally come back to?
I like it better with just the tension, but this show's bad about that because none of the characters we thought might actually hook up do hook up.
They only put Tendi and Rutherford, they tease it at the end,
Right.
but it's not. It'll probably go ahead, but it's not clear, right?
Yeah. We don't get Mariner Boimler. We don't get Mariner Ransom.
We do get Mariner and Jen, although they, obviously they show that as
Yeah.
first. It is interesting. I guess this is not true of Discovery and Strange New Worlds and Picard. And I think it has a little bit to do with the more serialized storytelling that especially Discovery and Picard are doing. And I think it has a little bit to do with how, honestly, in a lot of ways, I think sexual mores have gotten more conservative in the past 20 years. But if you think back to the 90s, it felt like in Voyager and S9, most characters got a hookup episode with a new character, maybe once a season or definitely once every 2 seasons.
We don't really have that here.
Partially that's we have shorter seasons and they're more serialized, but I also do think it's generally sexual mores have gotten a lot more conservative.
Yeah, we figured we would have had a finale in one of the seasons where Mariner and Ransom were in bed, or it just ends on a cliffhanger.
What I wanted them to do would be something like, do you remember that episode of Next Gen where Riker and Ro famously dislike each other
Yeah.
throughout that show? But then everybody gets their mind wiped, and Riker and Ro decided they must have been a couple. They just start shacking up, and then they're horrified once the memories return.
That's funny. That would have been awesome.
Well, I've made this point many times before, but I do just want to make this point again. We have a side character who's presented as a crazy conspiracy theorist for saying Wolf 359 was an inside job, and he's not crazy. Wolf 359 was definitionally an inside job.
Technically,
as Locutus makes it an inside job.
Technically, it was. Technically.
To go back to other hobby horses, although that's just a hobby horse of mine, this is a hobby horse of both of ours. It's very funny that Billups thinks Mariner is Jin the Andorian, which is interesting foreshadowing that Jin the Andorian and Mariner will.
Yeah, I did forget about I forget Jin does get hooked up with the Mariner. We've seen Jin a couple of times this season, but she's in the background. You're right. Yes, she has been.
That's the other thing that that hasn't paid off for me as much because I'm a bad distracted viewer, but that is something the show really does. We were talking earlier in the episode about it building continuity, building references. It also did heavy of, okay, you're going to have a background character for a long time, and then you're going to bring them maybe not up for a spotlight episode, but you're at least going to give them a speaking role or a plot role in a couple of episodes.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the bridge characters in Next Gen that you'd see all the time, that just be repeats, extras that were the same over and over again. They also did it in Babylon 5 too.
They do it in Babylon 5, yeah. They get the guy who's like the flight controller in Babylon 5. I'm really embarrassed that I don't remember her name, but I feel like in Next Gen, there was a black lady who sat at Con, like in the later seasons after Wesley left, and you saw her a lot. Not every episode, but a lot. And she's one of those, like, man, maybe they could have developed her a little instead of spending season 7 to pick terrible family reunion episodes. Well, Matt, were you psyched for the return of Badgie in the season?
Yeah, we got Badgie, Bob. We got Badgie. And of course,
you love Badgie.
Yeah, I do love Badgie. He's one of my favorite characters in the series. Will be our death. Badgie will bring our death. Will bring our end.
He will. I mean, I wouldn't mind having like Badgie be my euthanasia thing for the government. Yeah, that's why I like Peanut Hamper so much. And it's, one of the reasons is her kiss off line. Sucks to be organic.
Yeah. For some reason, I forget that Shax dies in the first season. I don't know why I forgot this. I don't know. It just hit me when I rewatched it.
I didn't, because the resurrection angle for Shax this season is pretty funny.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it just dawned on me watching it again. Oh yeah, Shax died. There's a whole thing there.
I think I knew it, but I was still a little surprised when they started leading up to, oh yeah, this leads up to Shax sacrificing himself.
Right.
And then I wanted to confirm, this was the first time we'd ever seen the Titan, right?
Correct. I mean, other than like the cover of books.
Because they just mention it in Nemesis, they don't show it, and then And I'm not even sure if this is the same design as the one they use on the books. I should have looked that up. I'm sorry.
No, there's no telling.
Another good bit of dialogue is Freeman being horrified that Mariner has a tribble in her stash of contraband, and Mariner just yelling, "That's for personal use."
Yeah, who's a tribble? What would you do with it anyway? What is it? It's a pet, apparently. I guess you pet it.
Well,
that's about it.
The phrase personal use has a certain implication.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
We don't need to develop it, but it has a certain implication.
Yeah.
Speaking of certain implications, I really liked Ransom saying to Troy, "Will other Betazoids sense that I exaggerate my capabilities to mask an ocean of insecurity? I can make that work for me."
God, Ransom's got great lines.
Oh, he does. Yeah, lines like that make you, Ransom should be. Also, just to get us the explicit tag for this, I really liked Mariner screaming at Boimler, "I can't believe you took a promotion to the motherfucking Titan."
So, Bob, at one point, Riker returns to the bridge, and he starts just talking about how he's really been into these holodeck programs of the Enterprise era, the Archer era. Hammer on the head right there, boom. Nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head with the hammer. Boom.
I don't know that you needed to say with the hammer, but okay.
I'm going to punch you in the face. Let's go. Anyway, you get the point. You get the points I'm trying to say here, Bob. Is that
I get the hammer.
yeah. What I'm trying to say is it's almost he's still watching Enterprise. Dude's just addicted to watching Enterprise.
You know what they do in the Enterprise finale, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
For listeners who don't know, the Enterprise finale shows like if I'm remembering it correctly, because it's been about 10 years, it jumps ahead of the narrative about 10 years. And it shows Archer being sworn in as the Federation president. And it's revealed that the whole jump ahead is a holodeck program that Riker has been running. And it also has Riker playing in the holodeck program as a chef. And Chef has been an often mentioned but ever unseen character on Enterprise. It raises the question of, is Riker's ancestor Chef, or is it just Riker just picks this minor role to watch it? Like you're saying, he's addicted to TV or whatever.
Yeah. Is he an unreliable narrator? That's the real question, Bob.
It could further raise questions of, is maybe all of Enterprise just Riker's holodeck program? And is maybe that's why it's so weird and bad?
Maybe it's like fan fiction.
Or fan fiction. And yeah, obviously when that happened, Enterprise fans really hated that finale. I think that maybe they were overreacting a little. I also think maybe if they wanted a better finale, then Enterprise just should have been a better show. But after the experience of watching Discovery and Picard and Prodigy, I do feel a lot more charitable to Enterprise. It's now very far from the world.
Oh, all right,
Now,
Bob. Go ahead.
my final point about this is Riker. We talked about engage the core earlier. Riker's command of give me warp in the factor of 5, 6, 7, 8 is so stupid, but I love it. So,
And that's why Bob Riker is my character of the episode.
I'm tempted to give it to Troy for her cringing while Riker gives his warp command, but I was really struggling between Landru or Badgie, but I think I got to give it to Landru just because they're worshiping the dang computer.
Classic. All right, Bob.
Oh, man. It's been a great journey with you through Lower Decks Net. The listeners should join us next week as we recap in a quick, abbreviated fashion all 5 seasons of Lower Decks. We might talk about the 70s Star Trek a little as well. Am I right in saying we have that Section 31 movie coming in January, coming next month?
I do believe so. There was a commercial for it during Lower Decks.
We'll probably do an episode on that movie, although there is some possibility that we'll just find it too boring or too painful to talk about. So I don't want to absolutely promise that we will do it.
Yeah, we'll see how it is.
We'll see how it is, listeners. Well, thanks for joining us. See you next week. This has been Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland.
Thanks for listening.